Alex Hormozi breaks down the entrepreneur's journey into 6 stages. Most quit in the valley of despair, that dark middle phase. Here's how winners push through. Beat fear by getting specific. Hire A players who actually execute. Use the more, better, new framework to grow. Remember, hard work isn't the price you pay for success, it is the success. The goal is the climb itself. Stay persistent, build leverage, and never quit in the valley.
Today is, it's pretty laser focused.
Yeah.
And we're not starting with a marketing funnel or a spreadsheet.
No, not at all.
We're starting with the human being who
Right.
actually has to execute that funnel and, fill that spreadsheet.
Exactly.
So this deep dive is all about the strategic and, maybe more importantly, the psychological frameworks you need to go from a $0 idea, that little spark, all the way up to generating tens of millions in business.
Yeah, and we're pulling from this incredible powerhouse source who's done it multiple times. We're looking at the core blueprints that work across the whole scale.
It's a whole scale.
I mean, whether you're trying to make your very first dollar or you're already at 10 million and trying to get to 100 million, the foundational truths are basically the same.
But you said it, and I think we have to start here. There's this hard truth that comes before any of the strategy.
It's the prerequisite. It's the thing that if you don't have it, none of the other stuff matters.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Because the strategies, they only matter if you can actually pull the trigger on leaving your corporate job, right? What is that psychological commitment?
It's the willingness to be uncomfortable. And not just uncomfortable, but uncomfortable in front of the people you care about most.
That's the tough part.
It is. The source calls it the requirement for impossible choices. These are decisions where, both options feel just terrible in the short term. It takes real courage to be wrong publicly. And this is the core of it, facing the potential shame of failure in front of your family, your mentors, your friends. That sheer emotional weight is the friction that keeps genuinely talented people trapped.
Trapped in a life they don't even like.
A life they actively despise for years, sometimes decades.
And what I found so compelling in the source material was the author's own catalyst for this. His reason for changing. It wasn't born out of, economic desperation.
No, quite the opposite.
It was born out of psychological dread.
Yeah.
You had this person, the one we're profiling, who had the guaranteed, pre-approved path to success.
He had everything lined up. I mean, a successful white-collar job, a paid-for condo that overlooked the city.
Wow.
He had the academic chops, too. The GMAT score was, and this is a key detail, it was above Harvard's mid-score range.
So the path was crystal clear.
Oh, completely defined.
Got it.
Business school, then management consulting, investment banking, private equity. That's a path that provides this ultimate social lubricant.
What do you mean by that?
It's the world's way of saying, we approve of you. You are a success. You are an excellent person.
It's the path of maximum external validation.
Yeah.
And that is incredibly difficult to walk away from.
Almost impossible for most people.
Yeah.
But the pivot for him, it came from looking ahead.
20 years ahead.
Yes. It was this moment of just profound, cold clarity. He looked at the people who were 20 years ahead of him in that exact corporate structure, and he realized he didn't want their life.
And that wasn't just a small disappointment.
No, it was an existential crisis. It triggered this feeling of, and it's a direct quote, I didn't want to be alive if that was the only guaranteed outcome for all his effort.
That's heavy.
It's not about being dramatic, though. It was just this fundamental recognition that the path he was on was completely incompatible with what he wanted, which was self-determination and, joy.
And that brought on what you call the ultimate emotional hurdle, which I think we all face when we want to make a big change. It's the external dream versus the internal dream.
Right.
He crystallizes it into this really painful realization. His dream has to die in order for mine to live.
And in that sentence was primarily his father. His dad was just immensely proud of that conventional success track.
I could imagine.
And the fear of disappointing that one specific person it was just overwhelming. I mean, think about what that pressure does to you. It makes you physically and emotional and want to run away.
Which he literally did. He drove halfway across the country.
Left the state entirely. All before he could even find the courage to pick up the phone and call his father.
Just to say he'd quit.
To tell him he'd quit this prestigious corporate job and was going to do something in the fitness industry.
And that decision had real consequences.
Oh, yeah. It led to a years-long struggle in their relationship. He went from being the prodigal son, the guaranteed success story, to taking a minimum wage job, cleaning floors in a gym.
So he traded that approved status for complete uncertainty.
He did, and that physical and emotional separation just highlights how monumental, how paralyzing that pressure from external expectations really is.
And for you, the listener, who might be sitting in that corporate job right now.
Yeah, you have to understand this. He had to accept the very real possibility that his most important relationship might be damaged forever just to pursue his own path. That is the true cost of entry.
So if the monster that stops people from even getting to the business knowledge is fear, then we have to defeat that monster first.
Gotta slay the dragon.
Let's spend some real time on that. We're moving into section 1, conquering the fear monster and quitting your job. For that 0 to 1 entrepreneur, fear and uncertainty, they're not just, secondary obstacles.
No, they're the primary barrier, the only barrier that really matters at that stage.
And this is where we have to sort of reevaluate our definitions of words we think we know, like courage and cowardice.
The source makes this really provocative distinction here. Courage isn't the absence of fear. That's not a thing.
Right.
It's acting despite the fear. It's feeling that nausea in your stomach and just moving forward anyway.
Okay, so then what's cowardice?
Cowardice is letting that fear change your behavior in an aversive way. It's when the fear makes you move away from what you authentically want.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you want to start a business, but you stay in a job you hate because the potential shame of failure is just too great. That inaction, that is defined here as cowardice.
So the core idea is,
the preference should always be, I'd rather be a failure than a coward. The label of cowardice is what we should truly fear, because it implies self-sabotage. And it's driven purely by a failure of will, not a failure of strategy.
that reframes the entire WIS calculation. Because most of us, we fear the practical failure, the money loss, maybe bankruptcy.
Like the spreadsheet stuff.
But that's not the deep, soul-crushing emotional fear we're actually talking about here.
Precisely. And making that distinction helps us deal with the conventional advice about quitting, the sensible math.
Ah, yes, the sensible math. Conventional wisdom says you save 3 to 6 months of personal savings. And you only quit when your side hustle income matches your current income for what, 3 to 6 months straight?
That's the prudent, financially literate path. And look, that math is undeniably sound. It makes sense.
Good.
But the author observes that the sensible math is, quote, never actually the reason that people don't do it.
So it's a smokescreen.
It's a convenient, logical excuse. If the barrier were purely financial, everyone with a 6-month safety net would quit their job. But they don't. The barrier is psychological. The fear exists in the vague. It's the shapeless, undefined sense of doom.
Okay, so here's where we get into the neurological battle. The vague fear versus specific logic, or as the source puts it, the amygdala versus the prefrontal cortex. How do we use logic as a weapon against that emotional panic?
So your fear is generated in the amygdala. It's your primitive brain, your lizard brain. It operates in this apocalyptic, immediate threat response mode.
Fight or flight.
Exactly. So when you think about quitting your job, the amygdala just screams, I'll fail, everyone will hate me, and I'll die alone in a ditch.
Which is a little disproportionate.
Just a little. The solution is to move from that vague emotional fear to specific dispassionate logic. And that engages the prefrontal cortex, which is your rational planning center.
You force yourself to play out the worst case scenario, but with like intense granularity. You don't just stop at I will fail.
No, you have to run the logic chain all the way to its ultimate conclusion. So let's take your perspective as the listener. If you quit your job and the business completely implodes in, say, 18 months, what happens next?
Okay, so scenario A, the business fails completely.
Right. And then what?
I'd have to find another job.
Okay. And what would you have then that you didn't have before?
Well, a story, I guess.
You'd have a compelling real-world story of taking a risk and trying to execute something that's actually highly valued for business school applications. Or you can leverage that experience, plus your previous professional background, to get another job, maybe even a better one.
The prefrontal cortex starts mapping solutions. It sees a path forward.
It does. Now, what about the financial loss?
I'd lose my savings.
Right, but what does that actually mean? For most people under 40, the amount is probably non-material in the grand scheme of a 40-year career. You have to reframe it. It's a tuition fee for a massive education you can't get anywhere else.
And the social cost, the shame.
Worst case, you have to go back to your parents' house for a year, sleep on a friend's couch for a bit, you have your tail between your legs. But is that permanent?
No.
It's temporary. So when you run that logic chain, when you keep asking, and then what? The ultimate outcome is so much less scary than the vague, amygdala-driven panic.
The worst case is often, I have a cool, slightly painful story, and maybe some temporary shame that is entirely self-inflicted.
And that logic chain fundamentally disengages the amygdala. The primitive brain, it can't reason through a sequence of non-immediate events. It can only process immediate threat. When you show it the map of recovery, the threat it diminishes.
And this leads to that phenomenal contrast that just forces the decision.
Yeah.
You contrast the guaranteed bad with the chance at good.
Right. Your current situation, staying in the job you hate, is a guarantee of an outcome you don't want.
Delayed misery.
Delayed misery. You were on a certain bad path, it's just postponed. The new path, entrepreneurship, that's a chance at genuine good, with an uncertain timeline and, yes, guaranteed short-term difficulty.
So the question to ask yourself is, why would guaranteed misery, even if it's delayed, be rationally better than any available option that includes a chance at happiness?
And the reason we choose it is a psychological bias called delayed discounting. It's one of the most destructive forces in human decision-making.
How does it work?
We discount the future value of a lifetime of misery and regret to avoid the immediate short-term pain of quitting the job or making that uncomfortable call to your family or facing a month of reduced income.
We prioritize immediate comfort.
We prioritize the immediate comfort of the known, even when the known is fundamentally miserable. If you can honestly face the reality that your current life path guarantees unhappiness, then the uncertainty becomes the only rational choice.
That reframing it's everything. Once you clear those emotional and psychological hurdles, then and only then can you move from mindset to strategy.
Right.
We've established the why and the courage you need. Now, what do we actually build? Let's transition to section 2. Building from first principles. Ideas, leverage, and attention.
And we have to start with a huge rejection, a really important one. We have to reject the idea of copying.
Copying successful people.
Yeah. The source quotes Andrew Wilkinson, who says, "Every entrepreneur ever, here's the winning number for my lottery ticket. The drawing already happened."
And that's the fallacy of trying to directly model hyper-successful entrepreneurs.
Exactly. When you look at Instagram or listen to a founder's story, they're showing you the result of a specific formula run at a specific time in a specific market condition that just doesn't exist anymore.
If you try to build Facebook today, you'll fail.
You'll fail. The conditions that allowed them to win have changed dramatically, so we have to reject the tactic and seek the foundational principles instead.
Okay, foundational principles. Let's start with the concept of currency.
Time is the primary currency. Everything you do, everything you exchange, money, labor, effort, it's all denominated in time. So the core economic goal in a 0-to-1 business isn't just to make money.
It's to achieve the highest possible return on your time.
You're trying to escape that direct exchange of 1 hour of your time for a fixed amount of money.
And the structure that helps you maximize that return on time.
It's built on 2 primary principles: leverage and supply demand. You need a viable market, that's supply and demand, and you need to maximize your output relative to your input, that's leverage.
The fulcrum.
The fulcrum is the icon of leverage for a reason. It lets a small force move a huge object. In business, that small force is your time.
So let's break down where to find that leverage. A business is just a series of interconnected actions.
We can simplify all business activity into 3 core functions: attract attention, convert attention, and deliver a product. Your strategic focus has to be on maximizing leverage in each of those segments.
Okay, give us an example. Low versus high leverage in attracting attention.
Low leverage is reaching out to people one-on-one. Cold calling, individual emails, slow networking.
High leverage.
High leverage is creating one single piece of compelling content: a video, an article, a software tool that is then seen by 1 million people. You do the work once, but the reach multiplies exponentially.
And for conversion.
Low leverage is a human salesperson on the phone, or a high-friction sales cycle where you have to manually convince every single person. High leverage is an automated checkout page, a really well-written sales page, or a product demo that converts buyers with 0 direct human interaction from you.
And delivery. This is the ultimate goal of leverage.
Right. Low leverage is delivering a service one-on-one, coaching, consulting, any hands-on labor. High leverage is selling software, media, information, or highly scalable physical goods that can be, cut once, sell 1,000 times.
Like a SaaS product or a digital course.
The perfect examples. You build it once, and every subsequent sale is almost pure profit, with basically 0 marginal cost of delivery.
That makes the task really clear.
Yeah.
Find the maximum leverage in those 3 steps. But that still leaves the biggest question. What should the business idea be? The source gives a framework here, the 3 Ps, and you only need one of them.
You only need one. They are pain, past profession, or passion.
Let's start with pain. Why is that one so powerful?
Pain is a problem you currently experience, or one you have personally experienced with real intensity. Maybe you have a rare food allergy, or you're constantly irritated by the lack of integration between 2 essential software tools you use every day.
This gives you deep, visceral knowledge of the customer.
Because you are the customer. You don't have to do market research or run surveys. The market is your own lived frustration.
Right.
If you've spent 20 years trying every nasal spray, every allergy treatment, every piece of financial modeling software, you know exactly what's wrong with the existing solutions. You can build something better. That deep personal understanding is how you create exceptional, differentiated products.
Okay, what about past profession? This feels like the simplest path for quickly replacing your income.
It's the most proven way because the market has already shown it's willing to pay for that skill. It's a fractionalized version of your old job.
So if you were a corporate lawyer,
You can fractionalize that skill. You could offer specific, high-demand contract templates or specialized compliance strategies online. You're trading your skill for money, but without a boss. It's economically proven and it's low risk.
but maybe less upside.
Typically less explosive upside than solving a unique pain point or building a huge community around a passion. Yes.
Which brings us to passion. A lot of people dismiss passion projects as just hobbies, but this framework validates them.
Anything you would spend your discretionary time on anyway model cars, extreme gardening, a niche fandom, Dungeons and Dragons, whatever, can be dismantled into a viable business.
How so?
If you're obsessed with something, you will naturally acquire the deep understanding you need to succeed. You can manufacture a niche product for that community, provide specialized services, flip collectibles, or, most commonly today, create media and build a community around it.
And the work doesn't feel like work.
If you love it, the effort required for that procedural learning, the actual doing, it feels like play. And that ensures you can stick with it long enough for success to compound.
This all feeds directly into this idea of missionaries versus mercenaries, which is so key for understanding long-term success.
Missionaries are the people who viscerally experienced a problem. They're solving it because they don't want anyone else to suffer through it. They're driven by empathy and obsession.
And mercenaries.
Mercenaries are driven purely by market opportunity and profit optimization. They see a gap in the market and they fill it.
And the counterintuitive insight here is that the missionaries end up making the most money.
They do, because they lead with the story, the emotional context, the personal struggle. That is so much more compelling than a logical, data-driven mercenary pitch. They aren't doing it only for the money, but that obsession almost guarantees they find the absolute best solution and build the best product.
And the profits follow?
The profits follow as a byproduct of their mission. And their commitment is just more resilient against short-term hardship, which is critical when you hit those inevitable valleys of despair.
Okay, so let's connect that missionary ethos to the modern world. How does a founder actually attract attention in the hyper-competitive environment of, say, 2025? The source gives a very clear warning about what not to do.
The warning is this: don't try to outscience the science people. If you're starting a fitness brand, there is already a PhD bodybuilder with 15 years of experience who is jacked and creating super technical content. You will not win the war of pure facts or statistics against that person.
So your advantage, your alpha, it doesn't come from being better at the core skill, it comes from leaning into you.
Your unique fingerprint,
Yeah.
your life, your specific experiences. Think of your online presence or your media as a mosaic. Everyone has the same basic pieces: the core product knowledge, the delivery mechanism. But your unique flavor of media, the blend of philosophy, dark humor, your specific backstory, how you integrate your partner into your content, that proportion of elements is unique to you. Nobody can copy the ratio of your personality.
The courage to be yourself. But that's hard, isn't it? Because there's no blueprint for being uniquely you in a business sense.
That's why everything inside you wants to just dilute your content to fit an existing approved blueprint. We crave the safety of imitation.
But diluted content just becomes everyone else's stuff.
And then you're competing on price and function, which is a race to the bottom, and you're likely to lose. Authentic, unique flavor builds brand affinity.
This circles back to that core value idea. Most products are commoditized. People buy from somebody.
Absolutely. When you're faced with two equally functional products, two identical protein powders, two similar software tools, brand affinity means the customer votes with their dollars for the creator they like, the mosaic they connect with. That relationship guarantees long-term attention and conversion, and that's the kind of leverage no copycat can ever replicate.
That sets the stage beautifully for the next big challenge, which is sustaining the effort. Because once you have the idea and a way to get attention, the next challenge is avoiding the trap of chasing every shiny new object.
The shiny object syndrome.
Exactly. Let's move to section 3, the entrepreneurial doom loop and the power of focus. This is a critical psychological roadmap for anyone trying to scale.
This is the 6-stage entrepreneurial life cycle. And understanding this cycle is maybe the most important defense mechanism you can develop. The vast majority of well-intentioned entrepreneurs get permanently stuck in stages 3 and 4.
Okay, let's walk through them one by one, starting with the beginner's mindset.
Stage 1 is uninformed optimism. You see the success stories, the money, the opportunity, and you think, that looks easy. You believe your natural talent is enough to guarantee rapid success. You have no idea what the actual day-to-day grind is like.
And then stage 2 is the harsh reality check.
Informed pessimism. You dive in, you start working the plan, and you realize, oh my God, this is significantly harder, more complicated, and requires way more focus than I ever expected. The initial excitement just evaporates, and it's replaced by grinding reality.
And stage 3. This is the classic sinkhole. This is where most businesses die.
The crisis of meaning, also known as the valley of despair. You're working hard 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, but your efforts are not yielding results. The numbers are flat or even declining. This is the moment of truth where your path splits. You either move toward achievement or you fall into the doom loop.
And the trap stage 4 is what guarantees failure by resetting the whole cycle.
This is when you hop back to uninformed optimism, and it's often triggered by chasing the woman in the red dress.
Ah, the metaphor from The Matrix.
Yeah.
What does the woman in the red dress look like for a modern founder?
She is the agent from the system, designed to destroy the opportunity you are currently working on. You're wrestling with your tough, operational, messy business staffing issues, supply chain problems, a difficult client. You are deep in the valley of despair.
And then?
And then an alluring new opportunity surfaces. A new AI widget, a different e-commerce vertical, a crypto token, a partnership that promises massive passive income.
The new thing always looks easy because you only see the upside, not the problems.
Precisely. You quit the hard, messy work of your current business to chase the new, seemingly easy one. But that new opportunity is also fertilized with its own unique set of massive, complicated problems that you just don't know about yet. You've just exchanged known problems for unknown problems.
And by hopping back to stage 1, chasing that red dress, you end up living the same 6 months.
Over and over again. The same cycle of excitement, crash, and despair for 20 straight years. The only path to achievement, which is stage 5, requires resisting that red dress and sticking with the difficult thing until you reach informed optimism.
Stage 5. Informed optimism. You've earned this.
Right. You understand the bad parts, the specific challenges of logistics or marketing or whatever, but you now know how to avoid them or minimize their impact. You can maximize the good because you've finally built a procedural map of the territory.
And that finally leads to stage 6, achievement. But this requires ruthless focus, which is where the concept of the arrogance of multiplicity comes in.
It is the height of entrepreneurial arrogance to assume that you, running 3 ventures at the same time, will beat a competitor who is only doing one thing.
One thing.
That competitor is entirely focused on optimizing their single product, their single market, their single funnel. They are not splitting their intellectual capital, their cash, or their attention.
And this often stems from a confusion of roles, right?
A key mistake is confusing the role of the owner, who manages a portfolio of successful companies, with the role of the CEO, who must concentrate all their attention on one thing to make it successful. If you are the founder and the CEO, you have to be a single-minded operator until that business achieves liftoff. Trying to launch 3 rockets at once guarantees none of them will reach orbit.
So to break that doom loop and enforce that focus, the source defines commitment in a very operational way.
Commitment is the elimination of alternatives. It's like the analogy of marriage. You eliminate the other attractive options you could pursue, forcing absolute fidelity to the difficult path you're on.
You have to burn the boats.
You have to burn the boats. You structure your life and your finances to make pursuing alternatives difficult, even painful. You are removing your own safety valve to guarantee you put in the necessary volume and duration of effort.
And that effort compounds exponentially. The source points out that founders often make a fundamental math error when they think about quitting one venture to start another.
They do. They compare year zero of a new, exciting venture to year zero of their current, messy one. They forget to compare year 4 of their current venture, where they have procedural knowledge, market traction, a team, to year 0 of the new one.
That's a huge mistake.
It's everything. Success is almost never about finding some radically smarter secret. It's about, quote, doing the obvious thing for an extraordinary period of time without believing that you're smarter than you are. Compounding requires duration.
Which brings us to the inevitable hardship. We have to shatter the illusion that entrepreneurship means instant freedom and ease.
You quit your corporate job thinking you wanted to work less and make more money. The brutal reality you immediately face is that you will now work way harder and make less money for an extended period of time, sometimes years.
This is the hard truth of the hardship, and it's why most people don't quit with a big bang.
They don't. They fizzle out. They just fade away. They fizzle because they just stop trying. They become unwilling to chew the new glass of the next level's problems. Every time a business scales, the problems change category.
The currency of the hardship changes. You might conquer the long hours of the 0 to 1 hustle, but then you're faced with legal issues, complex personnel decisions.
Or the need to master an entirely new domain, like the example of the legendary infomercial company that was just unwilling to crack YouTube 10 years ago.
That new domain, that new problem, that's the new glass.
It's sharp, it's unfamiliar, and it's painful to chew. They had to transfer their generalized business knowledge into a whole new domain. That uncertainty hurts because they only knew 4 things about YouTube, not the 400 things they needed to know to win. You have to iterate through failure, constantly chewing new glass, until you find the kernel of procedural truth.
And that transition from being the lone doer to the assembler of talent is maybe the most painful type of new glass. Let's move to section 4, the highest leverage activity, hiring and training.
This brings us to the most painful, most dangerous period for a growing company, which the source calls the swamp. It's typically located between the $1 million and $3 million revenue phase.
Why is that $1 to $3 million range so toxic?
Because your company is now too big for one founder to manage everything, but it's too small to absorb the cost of A-level talent. If you have $1 million business with $200,000 in profit, hiring an A-player chief marketing officer might cost you exactly $200,000.
That forces an impossible choice.
It's another one. You have to sacrifice all of your immediate profit to increase your future capacity and organizational horsepower. Or you have to decide to work another 6 hours a day, pushing yourself towards certain burnout and capping your growth.
And the key is choosing capacity.
Choosing capacity over immediate profit is the key to escaping the swamp.
The ultimate goal, then, is to increase intellectual and operational horsepower. We often think that hiring 50 people increases output by 50 times, but that's a dangerous corporate myth.
We use the barrel versus ammunition analogy to fight that myth. Most people you hire are ammunition. They're necessary for volume. But your organizational output is limited by the speed and accuracy of your barrel, your high-capacity individuals who synthesize information and make key decisions.
And there's data to back this up, right?
Absolutely. The data often shows that the square root of the number of people in an organization generates 50% of the value. If you have 100 people, 10 of them, the barrels, are responsible for half the value creation.
So the game isn't about hiring ammunition.
The game is finding more barrels. That's where the leverage truly exists.
Okay, so how do we staff up for capacity, especially when the founder doesn't even know what a good person in a specialized role, say a head of operations, even looks like yet?
You have to first develop pattern recognition, and the primary way to do this is with the barbell strategy for hiring.
The barbell strategy. Recruiting people on the ends of the spectrum. Explain the 2 ends.
On one end, you want the young and hungry. These are people who are there for growth. They prioritize learning and reps over immediate salary. They're willing to overcompensate with hours and effort, making up for inexperience with sheer volume and excitement.
They provide energy and volume.
And the other end of the barbell.
The end of career experts. These are not careerists. They've often made enough money. They're not chasing the next corporate promotion, and they just genuinely love the work itself. They bring immense strategic leverage, years of accumulated procedural knowledge, and calm decision-making to the table.
And you avoid the middle. Why is the middle ground so problematic?
That middle ground is where you find the employees who view the job as a pure transaction, a tit-for-tat exchange of time for money, often with inflated expectations for their current output. They are the most likely to become a major drain on managerial energy and organizational morale. You stick to the barbell ends. We know getting truly exceptional talent takes time. I mean, Steve Jobs famously took 12 to 18 months to recruit the best. If I'm a founder without a massive track record, how do I attract and assess A players effectively?
You have to treat the interview process itself like a rapid learning mechanism. It's called the consultant approach to hiring.
Which means?
You find 5 experts in the specific field you're hiring for, say Google Ads Management. You ask them who the best 3 people they know are. Then you interview those top candidates, even if you can't immediately afford them.
And what's the key to that interview?
You present them with the actual messy, nuanced business problems you're facing, and you ask, how would you solve these specifically?
So you're not just testing their fit, you're getting free, high-level consulting. And more importantly, you're mapping the information of that domain. You learn what the right answer should sound like.
Correct. You gain the declarative knowledge from the A players before you even hire one. And you can gauge their expertise by looking for 3 specific data points in their answers.
What's the first metric of expertise?
The quality and quantity of metrics they track. Beginners think in binaries. It worked or it didn't. An expert can break down why a marketing campaign failed. They'll tell you the impression rate was fine, but the click-through rate was too low, suggesting the ad copy was weak, even though the offer itself was sound. They can articulate that complex causality chain.
The second metric then focuses on action.
The specific, granular behaviors they will do to influence those metrics. If they say they'll coach up the sales team, you have to ask, what does that mean? What actions will you take on Monday?
You want details.
The more detailed their actions. I will meet every morning at 7:30 a.m. for a 15-minute role-playing session on objections, focusing specifically on the high-ticket product, the more you believe they can actually execute. Vagueness equals weakness.
And finally, they have to be able to connect their role back to the mission, revenue.
Ask every single candidate, regardless of their role, how do you make the company money? If you asked a customer support representative this and they can't articulate beyond answering questions, they're likely just performing a cost center function.
But a high-level winner will see it differently.
A winner will explain that they increase customer retention, they maximize referral likelihood by turning unhappy customers into advocates, and they identify upsell opportunities. They generate, or at least protect, revenue.
Okay, once you've hired these key people, training and culture become the ultimate limiters of performance. How do we ensure that procedural knowledge transfer happens efficiently? The source offers the 3Ds framework.
They document, demonstrate, duplicate. First, you document everything into a detailed step-by-step checklist. You remove all assumed knowledge.
Step 1.
Second, you, the trainer, demonstrate the checklist in front of the new hire. This step is critical because invariably during the demonstration, you'll realize you don't actually follow your own documented checklist. This forces you to adjust the documentation in real time until you can follow it consistently.
So that's the first moment of process improvement right there.
Precisely. Only after the documentation and demonstration are refined do you move to the third step. They duplicate it. They practice until the skill becomes automated, procedural knowledge.
And what about culture? It's often such a subjective, fluffy word in management. But here it's defined very operationally.
Culture is defined as the rules that govern reinforcement within the organization, what we reward and what we punish, explicitly or implicitly. The maxim is culture trumps strategy, because execution is the limit.
So a mediocre strategy with an unbelievable culture.
We'll crush a genius strategy with a toxic, low-compliance culture every time.
And this includes addressing the smallest discrepancies quickly, like someone being 3 minutes late to a team meeting.
Absolutely. Unspoken rules immediately become the minimum acceptable standard for excellence. If you don't call out the 3-minute tardiness from one employee, you have implicitly reinforced that it's acceptable for everyone. This requires the manager to be kind, not nice.
Kind, not nice. That distinction is key for having those difficult conversations.
It is genuinely unkind to an employee not to maximize the likelihood that they succeed in their role. Allowing poor behavior to persist because you want to be nice guarantees their eventual failure or stagnation. That's the cruelest outcome. You have to provide structure and accurate feedback.
And to give that feedback effectively and constructively, we rely on the stop, start, keep framework.
This simple model removes subjective insults and focuses purely on objective, observable behavior. Criticism has to be objective, a discrepancy between what actually happened and what was supposed to happen.
So not you're lazy.
An insult is you're lazy. Criticism is you were supposed to submit the client report by 5 p.m. and this week you were late twice.
And the framework structures the required actions.
It does. Stop, start, keep provides explicit, actionable direction. Stop giving unsolicited advice in team meetings. Start waiting until the other person is done talking before responding. And keep sending your weekly reports on time. This generates useful feedback that trains specific behavior immediately rather than just generating defensiveness and resentment.
We've established the right mindset, the importance of leverage, and the system for assembling talent. Now we have to move from the micro level of talent to the macro level of strategic resource allocation and scaling. This is Section 5, the system for learning, scaling, and risk mitigation.
This is where we talk about how a founder who's now acting as the CEO or owner should distribute their most finite resources: time, cash, and personnel. The guiding principle here is the more, better, new framework.
Okay, detail those 3 allocations.
70% of your resources should be allocated to more. That's your core business. Doing substantially more of what you already know works and generates predictable revenue.
Why such a heavy emphasis on more?
Because small businesses frequently mistake low volume for volatility. The example given is flyers. A beginner puts out 300 flyers and thinks the sales are sporadic and unpredictable.
And a veteran.
A veteran knows to put out 150,000 flyers in a month. Sales aren't volatile, they just weren't doing enough volume to make the sale statistically predictable. If a proven funnel converts 1 out of 100 people, doing 50 attempts gives you volatile results. Doing 50,000 attempts gives you predictable, scalable results. More volume solves perceived instability.
Okay, so 70% for volume and core execution. What about better?
20% goes to better, improving current systems and offers. This is A/B testing, process optimization, refining the script for your sales team. These are high likelihood, data-driven improvements based on the existing machine.
Like optimizing a checkout page.
Exactly. Reducing friction by 2% or changing the offer on the existing flyer based on customer feedback.
And the final 10%, which acts as a kind of insurance.
New. These are your moonshots or your insurance bets for the future. Investing in a new media platform, like an emerging social platform that might replace the current dominant one, or exploring a new adjacent market.
A market that could potentially cannibalize your old business.
Right, but that risk is necessary. This 10% is essential for mitigating future risk, making sure the business doesn't fizzle out because it missed the next big wave of change.
And this connects directly to the 3 strategic buckets every business has to fill.
1, get more customers. 2, increase lifetime gross profit per customer, or LGP. And 3, decrease risk, which is your insurance for the future, your competitive moat.
So the framework maps directly to the buckets.
The 70% more allocation primarily drives bucket 1 volume of new customers. The 20% better allocation drives bucket 2, optimizing the offer to increase LGP. And the 10% new allocation is focused entirely on bucket 3, decreasing long-term risk and ensuring survival.
This framework makes resource allocation feel less like guessing and more like a systematic process. And speaking of systems, if learning is the highest leverage activity in the beginning, we have to distinguish between the 2 types of knowledge.
Declarative versus procedural knowledge. Declarative knowledge is knowing about something. You read a book on sales strategies, you know the names of the techniques, you understand the theory. You can declare what you know.
But the theory is useless without execution.
And that's where procedural knowledge comes in. This is knowing how to do something. It's doing 100 sales calls, successfully closing a deal with a difficult client, instinctively knowing the right tone for negotiation. It lives in your muscle memory and your practiced intuition. The goal for rapid learning is a disciplined transition from declarative to procedural.
And the path to rapid procedural learning isn't just theory, it's a tremendous volume of activity. This is the ultimate shortcut.
You have to systematize the process of iteration and refinement. Do 100 reps, 100 sales calls, 100 pieces of content, 100 pitch emails, then find the top 10% that sucked the least, the ones that can get some traction.
And you analyze them.
You analyze why those 10% worked, you refine those specific behaviors, and then you repeat the process on the next 100 reps.
This is the Chris Rock comedy process analogy, isn't it?
Exactly. A comedian starts with an hour of new material on the road, finds the 5 minutes that actually worked, builds the next hour of material around those 5 minutes, and repeats that ruthless editing process until he has 60 minutes of fire. It's iteration driven by massive, high-volume action. Volume defeats uncertainty.
That tremendous volume is what separates the expert from the beginner. It's also how we maximize customer value after the sale, using the 4 R's for customer success. This is a simple, actionable framework every business needs.
These are the 4 levers for post-sale engagement. 1, retain the customer immediately. 2, get them to review the product or service. 3, get them to refer other people. And 4, resell or upsell or cross-sell the existing customer.
How does a founder systematize these? Let's take the retain function.
Retention means guaranteeing the customer achieves the outcome they paid for as quickly as possible. This often requires an immediate onboarding sequence, a dedicated success manager touchpoint, or a clear checklist of your first 7 days to success.
So for a fitness program,
You immediately get them their meal plan and access to the community group within 15 minutes of purchase. The velocity of their success guarantees their retention.
and how do we reverse engineer the review and refer process?
You need to identify the exact moment of maximum satisfaction. This usually happens right after the customer has successfully achieved their first critical milestone. If you sell B2B software, you ask for the review immediately after they integrate successfully and see the first positive report, not 6 months later.
And for referrals,
You have to remove all friction, script the ask for them, incentivize the referrer, make the mechanism for sharing ridiculously easy one-click. You make it automatic and frictionless.
and resale relies heavily on the trust and procedural knowledge gained from the previous 3 steps.
If you've retained them and they've reviewed and referred, you've established deep trust. The resell opportunity, the upsell to the premium tier, or the cross-sell to an adjacent service becomes an easy transaction because they already believe in your procedural competence.
Finally, we have to address the perpetual anxiety of the scaling entrepreneur: copycats. If competition copies your work, the source asserts they are automatically second. Why is that?
Because they copy step 5, but they do not understand the foundations. The 99% of the iceberg that's below the surface that led to step 6. They have declarative knowledge of your output. They can see your ads, copy your website, mimic your offer,
But they lack the procedural understanding.
and the visceral, missionary knowledge of why the product or system was built in the first place.
So when market conditions change, the copycat is dead in the water.
They cannot adapt. They can only follow the documented checklist, but they don't know what conditions led to that rule, and therefore they don't know how or when to break or bend those rules. The true practitioner, the founder, knows that the rule was implemented due to a specific regulatory change in 2017, but since that change was rescinded, the rule is now obsolete. The copycat doesn't have that context.
That guarantees their long-term failure.
It does. Your defense is the accumulated procedural knowledge that lives in your head and in the culture of your team.
So your true defense isn't your beautiful thumbnail or your clever t-shirt design, because those are easily copied.
It's the depth of the iceberg. You should be happy when people copy you. They're just confirming that your latest move was the right one, and they've just guaranteed that they are now trailing you by at least 6 months.
We started this deep dive talking about the courage required to quit your job. We should end with the host's personal philosophy on work, happiness, and life's meaning, which kind of wraps up the entire psychological journey.
This philosophy was derived from a period of forced idleness after he successfully sold his company and achieved financial freedom. He had nothing to do. And during that time, he looked back on his happiest days. He realized they weren't the days he spent relaxing on a beach.
They were the days he worked many, many hours, but specifically, days he worked out, produced something meaningful, and did both of those things with people he liked.
And he derived his life thesis from that observation. Hard work is the goal. It is not merely a means to an end. The purpose is not to work hard so you can eventually stop working hard. The purpose is to pursue hard work on things worth doing and then die.
That idea probably bothers a lot of people who associate work with corporate misery.
It does. But for the author, this is where joy and satisfaction are derived, in solving problems that are proportional to one's skill level.
And central to this whole philosophy is eradicating the shoulds from your vocabulary.
The expectation that life should be different than it is, that life should be meaningful, or I should take more holidays, that is the root of all unnecessary pain. Because these are expectations you're placing on an indifferent universe.
So true freedom comes from absolute responsibility.
And accepting is. If you blame your boss, your partner, or your upbringing for your bad life, then they hold the power over your happiness.
But if you accept absolute responsibility for your current state, then you hold the power to change. You accept the pain of the is.
Yes. And you eradicate the pain of the should. You stop demanding things from the world and you start imposing your will on the world, recognizing that you are the sole variable you can actually control. It shifts you from victimhood to radical self-determination.
We started with the fear of failure. We end with a similar psychological challenge: the courage to be happy.
Happiness requires the courage to be yourself and to define success on your own terms. Because your entrepreneurial path is unique, especially if you feel you're not playing by the rules of conventional society, your definition of success and joy will be fundamentally different from the public narrative.
That requires being willing to withstand that public pressure and the constant drumbeat of external shoulds.
And if we must ascribe meaning to life at all, the source posits that it is learning. The ultimate output of every experience, good, bad, or indifferent, is learning. And learning inherently changes your behavior over time. So the only important question is, are you maximizing the rate at which you are learning the things that you want to learn?
So what does all this mean for you, the listener? For the person who feels different, who feels their life doesn't fit the approved mold?
It means you should take immense courage in your variance. The very fact that you feel you are not playing by the rules means that the formula for happiness and success for you will also not follow the rules. Stop chasing the prescribed path. Stop chasing the red dress. You have the strategic frameworks now. The question is, are you willing to embrace your difference, reject the shoulds of others, and allow yourself to be happy in your own unique, maybe weird way?
That is the final challenge posed by this deep dive.
Go be weird, but execute ruthlessly.